social distance.
Hi.
Let's not worry about
That's
it.
what they say.
Hello.
What if the virus is mutating? It can like mutate.
Virus.
Don't get away from me. Go.
No coughing. Shit.
Yeah, I'm all good.
Okay.
Oh.
Well, let's hope you don't crash again.
The virus has been fully sequenced, right? So you can send it over the internet.
Yeah, it's only 7.8 kilobytes if you use the genetic code as a 4-bit structure, a 2-bit structure.
2-bit, that's right.
So you can even fit on the blockchain.
Maybe on the BSV blockchain they have enough space, but there's maybe not because there's too much weather data already. They put all the weather data there.
When's BSB holding it? Is it today or
It's
happened.
yesterday.
BSV? Yeah.
Big event.
Yeah.
Well,
Ah,
like
I
one
didn't
day
even
after
know.
BEP cash.
Yeah.
Big event.
Big event.
Huge. Stretching.
Yeah. I usually stand up for these things.
The whole time. Like
You
an
used-
hour.
Yeah. I don't know, maybe it's because I used to be a teacher, but to me it's like not strange to stand up for several
Easier
hours
to
a day.
to use gestures, no? If you like standing up. Like,
It feels a little bit more real because the avatars, well, that's debatable, but the avatars are not standing up.
Oh, we have a flyer.
whoa!
Yeah, we have
Johnny's flying.
Yeah. I think he's on the.
It's a bit
Doing
too close.
I guess I can't stay here.
Doing that.
Because
No.
I'll block other people's view, won't I?
Yeah.
No, that's different,
Oh,
isn't
did you hurt yourself?
I'm okay.
You just jumped from pretty high without like bending your knees or anything. It must be a big shock.
No fall damage.
You're just smiling.
Yeah. Can you die here? No.
If you die in life,
it? In real life.
Don't try it.
it happened to.
Your what's that? Your mind can live without your body. No, your body can live without a mind. Something
Yeah,
like that.
yeah.
We need Peter here. He knows the whole script by heart. That's what he told me.
There was a guy who had a seizure in VR chat once. There's a YouTube video of it, and you can see all the avatars freaking out because he's actually having like an epileptic fit, and it.
I see your mouth moving.
Yeah, no, it's on YouTube somewhere. It's amazing. Watching
I see
it.
that. I can't hear you, but
Let's see. I want to see that. But, oh.
Oh, oh, hello. Personal space. Personal space.
Whoa.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah. You can hear me now? Yeah.
How can you fly?
Fine.
No, I can't fly. I'm just standing on.
I
How about
was
now?
saying
How'd
hi.
you fix
No,
it?
it's like
Hi.
it's like
Yeah,
at
I
least
can hear you.
the meat green.
Thank
I know.
you
Great.
for
This has been a commercial
helping
for
I can see,
fix
yeah.
my noddle.
I can see. I don't know why though. Maybe it depends exactly where you place
How did you fix it?
teleport. See,
Yeah,
oh, that
I
didn't work.
plugged it into the right USB port.
No, but see, that's the normal one.
You don't want to tell me?
Yeah, that's the normal
No,
one.
I
but you can
plugged
make
it
like that
into
as
the
well
right
for some reason.
USB port.
It's weird. I don't know why.
I didn't do that.
Yep. There we go.
You didn't do
I
what?
I'm flying.
unplugged it from
Yes.
right USB port.
What time is it?
It's 9 p.m.
Ah,
It's the best time.
Somebody's way up
literally.
there.
Best time.
Okay. Slick Rick is.
well,
Slick Rick is literally in the ceiling.
Here.
What is it?
Man, it's quite old.
Well, how'd you get onto that?
Hey, Slick Rick, what are you doing?
Quiet.
Well, hi, anyway.
It's all yours.
Yeah, just send it over. No need for fast shipping. You know, just use standard shipping.
Okay.
Are you going to go to the VR chat after? Now that you can talk.
Okay, I think we can probably start.
Yeah.
Are you ready? Oh, you all good?
Yeah, sure.
So I'm gonna tweet up.
I'm never ready, but happy to.
That's good enough.
Okay, where's my controls over here? All right. Okay, I'll let you start the video.
I'm gonna start the stream first, and I'll send you the link.
Oh, Ben the Carman.
Are you doing it via Telegram? Okay.
Nothing.
Right. Teleported.
Okay.
But I can't teleport to the floor, so I can't see the floor up there.
By virtual clips are not that sharp.
You have to make a giant like arc, like shoot higher and then.
You gotta go over there first.
Okay. Maybe. Bring it back.
But you're here, I see you.
Yeah, no. Wait.
Or not.
Famous last.
Is there any
Be careful.
VR sneakernet? Sneakernet VR?
I think I managed to.
Sneaking at VR,
fall
that's a good
down
one.
far.
Wow. That would be amazing.
Get all your updates over SD card.
It's nice.
What if we simulated sneaking at in VR though? Hmm?
I would have loved coin jokes in VR.
I'm having.
Yeah, we could simulate sneaking it in VR. You could take packets to different worlds.
Lee,
Yeah.
one question.
catch me?
Yep.
Oh,
How does it work if you want
Jesus,
to
that
do
was crazy.
presentation in VR with a VR headset with slides.com? How does
Adam.
that work?
So you can
Does it-
on a private.
What kind of? Oh hey.
oh, hello.
Thank you.
What kind of stuff did you teach for?
So you're back.
Maths and
Yeah,
physics,
yeah.
basicly different variations of that. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, that's something I would love to get taught. I'm gonna try not to move much, I guess.
Oh, really?
Either
I was thinking
you
of doing.
or
so
or Andrew Polstra. I enjoyed the
Yeah.
the stuff he did in Japan.
Oh yes, that was a good one, wasn't it? I saw some of it online. Yeah, that was good. Yeah, I'd like more stuff like that actually in the future, maybe on YouTube or something like that.
Or here on the stage, you know, like this.
Yeah, it's kind of difficult though. You can't really whiteboard in VR. It's a real issue actually.
Yeah, without a whiteboard,
It's really hard.
You can.
The nearest thing we've ever seen to
Oh,
good
okay.
whiteboard technology in
All right.
VR is actually in Half-Life Alex.
Right,
Nice
I
one.
have one.
It's
Okay,
actually
well,
quite,
cross-
it's quite
cross-
I don't know if I can do.
it's just a
Make sure
it's just they
Oh,
actually
yeah.
got the technology right, and nobody else
That
has
looks
got it
pretty
right.
epic.
Like where you
Really?
take your hand and write, you know.
But you can go through the walls
Okay.
or through the floor.
In VR chat, there was like a
Yeah, just have to
Yes, they have it.
I can see the matrix.
painting.
That's what I mean.
lie on the floor and then.
They have it, and it doesn't really work, right?
Oh, okay.
I mean, you can
Okay, I'm gonna
3D
mute all of you in a
drawings, but
minute.
You can't actually write.
So,
effectively.
better
Have you
finish
ever
up
tried
your
it?
conversations.
Who's gonna be the devil again?
What's the trick
Okay.
with the
Well,
cameras?
just mute us.
I'm just trying to be nice, you know. I could just mute
Just
you.
mute us. Just get on with it.
Hope you let us talk at the end, not like last time.
censorship.
Yeah, I'll try.
We should use the blockchain. We should use the blockchain for this. Udi's gonna censor us.
Yay! Everyone is muted. It's so awesome. It's like if any of you ever tried like jumping from a plane with a parachute, and that's very similar. There's a lot of noise, and then you jump out, and then everything's quiet. So this is what it's like to mute everyone. So welcome again. Thank you. This is meetup number 10. I think it's number 10. This is so weird. Quarantine time moves so fast. So yeah, this is the 10th time we've been doing this. And we're doing like VR meetups every week, at least once a week. So if you watch this and you're not in the group yet, you should join. We have a Telegram group. It's called VR Bitcoin. It's t.me/VR Bitcoin. And we announce all meetups there, so absolutely you should join that. As usual, those of us who are here with us in VR, try not to move too much because it could be distracting to the speaker. And make sure you're not obstructing the view for anyone behind you. There's also our streaming camera over there, so make sure not to obstruct that. And that's pretty much it. So today we have Rodolfo Novak, who's the founder of ColdCard's that makes OpenDime and ColdCard, the hardware wallet that we all know. So Rodolfo is going to talk about his hate of USB. So that should be pretty fun. And after that we should have a Q&A session. I think you can just go ahead and start, Rodolfo. Go ahead.
Hey, can you guys hear me? Clap your hands if you can. There you go. So I'm having, it seems to have some connection issues. So if I drop, it might take me a couple minutes to come back. But so far, so good. All right, so we'll start. A lot of you know me from making ColdCard. Only really air-gapped hardware wallet. We have a true disdain for USB, and I hope to convey that to all you guys. USB is an old standard, and it's like it's a travesty, right? Of like a convoluted multiple standards through many years. The documentation is tens of thousands of pages long. Like there's simply no way to even just review the whole standard. It's very centralized. For you to get a vendor ID, you have to go through the registration body. It's been evolving and sort of like never really had parts that ossify, didn't ossify. So it's essentially a legacy on top of a legacy protocols. It's quite bad. Everything goes through the same port and the same hubs in the same system, right? So you're going to have power delivery, there's power communication, and then you're going to have, your mouse, you're going to have your keyboard transferring clear text passwords via HID. At the same time, in the same hub, in the same bus, you're going to have, hard drives, and you're going to have, Evo cables. You're going to have display ports. Everything in the same bus, right? There is visibility for everything at the same time. And then there is like a massive range of speeds. You're going to have stuff doing just, like a couple megabytes per second, and then you're going to have gigabit per second stuff, like hard drives. And then the cables themselves and the parts, the hubs, they're all sort of like the lowest possible bidder by the worst possible manufacturers. So it's a really, it really is, an unfortunate place we're in with that standard. I'm a big fan of SneakerNet, and SneakerNet is a very old term, and it's essentially a means for you to transfer data to somebody without a wire, right? So that is giving you a USB stick, hard drive, a floppy disk, putting a micro SD on a pigeon, and sending over distances with the data. Rogue One has two great scenes with that. one is and both of them, they're trying to sneak out the Death Star plans with SneakerNet, right? Because they have firewalls in their system, and they had no way of going around that. So what are you really risking when you use USB with your hardware wallet, right? I mean, the entire point of a hardware wallet is to create a barrier between, the filthy computer, the internet, and your private keys, right, for your Bitcoin. And the USB is kind of like the last mile of connectivity between those infected areas and your secure device. And what's nice about the SneakerNet part, the air gapping, right, is that you cut the connection, right? You could literally take scissors to it and be done with that connection. So the microSD is a great way for that, because it's also not USB. Here's a fun one. So when you're using USB and you plug it into a computer, the first thing it's going to do is announce its a serial number, its identifier, its manufacturer, and all that stuff. Here's an example of just powering up a Trezor into a computer. All this stuff comes up. So what happened to that is that any hacker could see a device that is plugged in, right? So they'll have immediate access to that. Other USB devices have access to that. The computer has access to that. The browser has access to that. It's quite terrible. So what we do with ColdCard is when you plug a ColdCard into a computer, if you do want to use it by USB, which I don't recommend, we don't do any data transfers until the PIN is typed in. And why do we do that? A bad guy physically cannot find out your ColdCard identifier without having the PIN. So without the PIN, you have nothing, right? That's sort of the idea. You just power up the spring. So any hardware wallet using this desktop PIN, for example, or a passphrase, I believe the Trezor 1 did that, and the earlier Ledger models, I can't quite remember now. But anyways, if you're using a desktop to transfer the PIN or to type in your passphrase into the hardware wallet, you're exposing its existence to the whole world, and it's quite bad. A bad guy can now knows you have it and can come back to hit you with the $5 wrench, and you don't really have plausible deniability anymore, right? So let's say you have 2-3 hardware wallets, and each of them has one of them has your real HODL is hidden, and then you have 2 more that are honeypots, right? What's the problem with that is now a bad guy that had access to your computer knows you have 3, not just 2. So they'll keep on beating you until you provide the third one. That's part of the issue there. And then we have the web USB, which is an even worse standard, right? I mean, it's should never have existed. That's, I mean, aside from being a JavaScript thing, which should not exist ever, he encourages the browser to essentially look into your USB stack and look for every single device that's there, right? That's really bad, because the internet is accessible and JavaScript has essentially very little protections around that. And some hardware wallets depend on that to actually function, right? They need the web USB support, either because you're a packaged desktop software wallet for your hardware wallet, but does use the JavaScript USB, or it's actually on that web itself. And I mean, a big pet peeve of mine, and the reason why we don't support any sort of one-token authentication or any of those features on ColdCard is because you shouldn't use your device that is made for you to keep your wealth to log in into your email. Just buy a second device and use that for your web login. There's really no reason for you to use the same device for both. Don't shit where you eat. And this is not FUD. I mean, there's been quite a few examples of attacks that happened on, for example, the UTF authentication for using Trezor for login, or there were a few others around, and there's been a lot of attacks via the USB. It's just the reality of how USB works. And then we come into transaction privacy, right? So, the data coming over the USB is defined by the hardware wallet vendor, and most hardware wallet vendors reveal the transaction details on their protocols. They include, your paying, all the TXOs, like sometimes even all your UTXO, sometimes your XPub. So essentially, you could dox your whole stash, and then there's some that are even worse. They'll do stuff, in plain text, which now, essentially you're giving up your privacy because of the USB connection. I haven't. The last I checked, Trezor still unencrypted, and they have an issue open to add encryption from 2018. I don't know what's going on with that. I think the worst offender was Bitbox. They were using 4-digit numeric PIN to encrypt, to scramble really the USB encryption, and you would just take 0 seconds to find out your PIN via USB, which is pretty unacceptable. The way we've done it is we have the ColdCard protocol is AES 256 encrypted in CTR mode. This is per session. The private key is 32 bytes. It uses Diffie-Hellman protocol, and it's verified by your XPub. So essentially, what that means is that nobody can really impersonate a ColdCard because we are using your XPub as the master secret, and in order to have that information, you have to have access to the coins in the first place anyways. And of course, we're not sharing any of that private key information. That's just for calculating the secret. Every single byte is encrypted as the encryption starts. So it's end-to-end encryption. There is no metadata. It's just essentially a wrapper for the whole communication between the ColdCard and the computer, if you do choose to use it via USB, which I still don't recommend, even though it's encrypted. Now, USB sniffing and attacks are sort of like it's a whole thriving industry, right? You can sort of go into different levels on how this works. One is modify the wallet, so modify Bitcoin Core or Electrum to be bad, right? So you can have it do nefarious things like change addresses or whatever without the user knowing, because say they downloaded a Electrum off of a bad server and didn't come from source or didn't verify the signatures. And then you can have a compromise of the USB device driver. So your Trezor or your Ledger device driver could be compromised. And then you could also have a virtual machine doing all kinds of changes to the data that's going in and out between the software wallet and the hardware wallet. And then the best sort of easiest ones is like really the evil cables, the bad cables. There's whole industries of giving you essentially a processor inside a USB cable that looks exactly like a factory cable that's like factory bought, right? And those will even have radios like Wi-Fi so that you can remote exploit that connection. So then the next level attack really there is the USB traffic, changing the traffic on the fly. So you could change, say, the change outputs or some other transaction detail to directly steal the money. Say if the user doesn't verify those, they will be signing a transaction that doesn't go where they think it's going. And then unlike the way we do it, some of these hardware wallet vendors, they'll be essentially, they are susceptible to each of these attacks, actually all of them. It's one big reason why we chose PSBT. So watch out for this proprietary mashup of protocols like protobufs and JSON on how this hardware wallets talk to the computer. We really think that PSBT is much more, it's a much more robust, superior protocol, and it's nice and open, it's been reviewed, it's a bit. So ColdCard essentially protects against all of those three attack vectors there, minus the wallet being, the software wallet on the computer being modified. But then again, that doesn't matter because we don't trust your local Electrum or core to begin with. We assume is rogue. We assume the user is owned. So we force the user to verify every detail of the transaction on the screen of the ColdCard at the time of signing, right? So essentially, when you have your PSBT loaded in, you're presented with every single change output and then all the other details of the transaction for you to review, and then you press OK, and then you sign it with your PIN. So then, really, what's the solution for getting out of this hell of USB? There really is going through Synchronet with PSBT, and PSBT is really good for that. So essentially, you create a unsigned transaction on your Electrum or core on the computer, and then instead of sending it to your hardware wallet via USB, you put it in a micro SD card. And then once you load the micro SD card into the ColdCard, then you review it, sign it, and then you take it out of the ColdCard and you put it back into the computer to broadcast the transaction. What's nice about that is now you have no physical connection between the ColdCard and any own device. That segregation is really nice. You can do that in a more secure environment that has no radio connection. Say, for example, a bank vault where you keep your ColdCard as or your basement or whatever, so that you're not susceptible to, I don't know, some remote, more advanced, esoteric side channel attack or anything like that. And that ColdCard is power only, right? So there is only a battery plugging into it, and you really remove a lot of attack vectors there. Another nice thing about that is you can also use a external or third-party PSBT tool to triple check that PSBT file in case your ColdCard is bad, so you can double check against. So what's sort of like the next level of paranoia you can go to is you can use one computer and two micro SD cards, and for that you'd have your first computer send. Sorry, this slide is wrong. It was supposed to be a B on the second micro SD there. But anyways, so you use your desktop to create a PSBT file, a transaction, and then you put it in your first micro SD card. You load that into your ColdCard that's cold, you sign a transaction, and then you use a secondary microSD card to take that signed transaction into back to the computer so that you can broadcast. What's nice about that is if you have a compromised microSD, you've removed that out of the equation there. You can randomly buy those. Now, for the second one, you can use 2 microSDs and 2 computers. This is like how I prefer to use it. So you have a desktop that you use for your transaction creation, right? And then you use a microSD to shuffle the information from that one into your ColdCard. That's how you sign it. And then from ColdCard, you use a secondary microSD that you load into another computer, normally say like your extra full node. And that's the computer, that secondary computer is one you only use for broadcasting transactions. It doesn't really know even your wallet. So you're less exposed that way. And then if you want really full privacy and you don't want to be concerned about anybody knowing transactions, you can always destroy the microSDs if erasing it is not enough for you. And if you might destroy a lot of microSD cards, do buy them from us. We do sell them. So how am I doing with time?
You have like, I guess 5 more minutes. How much do you need?
Okay. No, not much. I can.
I can send you more time.
Yeah, no, don't worry. So we have we do have a fun little example of the ultra paranoid. I'll put this one on the internet for you guys to read later. This is both a joke and real. You can actually go through something like this, trying to just use the paranoid. The ultra paranoid is as just like a sanity check on steps in each of the levels of how to skip to go around an attacker. I guess I'll go into Q&A, and yeah. So that was my talk.
Cool. Thanks. Okay, I'm going to
start. I
start.
didn't race it through much.
Didn't what?
I hope I didn't race it through. It felt like I was racing through it. First time I present in a fake meet.
Well, you didn't crash yet, so that's good.
Okay.
So everyone should have a raise hand button on the right bottom corner of their screen, and you can click that to ask for permission to speak. And let's start with 3DYDY. Yeah, you can go ahead. Just show us an emoji so we can see where you are.
I'm over here down in the far right again.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Hello.
Yep.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Perfect. Hello, everyone. I was here last week. Nice to see you all again. So my question is fairly simple, but this method does, like you're saying, seem to appeal to the people who are very paranoid, right? And I can't help but think of the measures people who have a vast amount of Bitcoin would go to keep them secure. You know, like the Winklevoss and how they talk about in their book how the measures they went to secure their funds, you know. And I'm just wondering, do you see this appealing to those kind of clientele more than the average user, or like who do you see purchasing this kind of product and using it?
So we sell a surprising number of these devices, and it's there is tens of thousands of people using these already. So it's actually pretty common, and it's funny because like when explaining this to somebody, it sounds very complicated and sort of out there. But when you actually try it, it's actually easier than using it via USB. It's very, very easy. You go in your Electrum, you make your transaction, you save it, you sign it, and you broadcast it. There really is not that much to it. And now there is app wallets on the phone that support this too. So you could use your, say, Blue Wallet to create a transaction and sign it in a ColdCard. So yeah, I think anybody who sort of has their real money or real privacy requirements, we'll end up at this route. We're already sort of seeing that.
Yeah, cool. That's awesome. Thank you.
Hello, MZ here. I'm here over here. My question is, I think the most critical thing is generating your master private key. And I really like the feature using dice to generate the private key on the code card. Do you have any advice which dice to use, or can you use just a random dice and keep to yourself that this dice is used, or any other recommendations or tips?
So I don't know if everybody heard it, but his question is about which dice to use when you're generating private keys on a cold card. We support dice throws, right? I am not very concerned about biased dice because the amount of entropy there is already quite ridiculous. So, and you can keep on throwing dice, right? You don't have to stop at say 99 where you're getting, I can't remember how many bits of entropy there. It's 128, but you can keep on going, right? So you can get casino dices on Amazon or really any gaming store. They will sell those, and those are very, very good. You can also buy different brands of crappier dices that are biased. And just because now you have different types of biases, you might sort of already add some different entropy there. It's not really a concern. I mean, like just the fact that you just adding a few throws of dice is already a huge difference comparing to thrusting. You should never trust a hardware wallet to generate your speed, regardless, right? That's even us having a secure element using a true random number generator that is certified. I personally don't trust that, and that's why we added this feature. I think it's silly to trust. So just adding a little bit of your entropy goes a long way, because it's not obvious to an attacker how much entropy of your own you added there and how to sort of attack that vector.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you.
Cool. Thanks. Next up, Ben the Carman. Go ahead, Ben.
Hey, I have a question about micro SDs being insecure. Like, what's an actual attack on a micro SD, and could that be mitigated by just like making it only be able to store like 500 kilobytes or something, so you can't actually hold software on there that could attack you?
So you don't really. It's surprising how little, like very, very advanced attackers could write software in very few bytes. So being limited definitely helps. It removes a lot of the low-hanging fruit, like in terms of like lower quality attackers, because they will need more room. You could make a fake microSD with all kinds of stuff in there. It's a lot, again, harder. That's why, so for USB cable, it's fairly easy to hide stuff in there, right? For a microSD, you have to already be a much higher end attacker and have access to much bigger pockets, because, just mechanically so tiny, and it has to still work as a microSD. But it can definitely be done. So one good way of mitigating microSD attacks is to just randomly buy them in person cash. Then you know for sure that those are safe. You can buy microSDs in any convenience store, right? So nobody is going to plant those there for you. So if you just buy some random there, and then you're pretty safe. Buying them from like quality sources and and quality brands also help as well, right? I mean, you still have those being fake, but it's harder.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Thanks. So next up, Philip. Go ahead, Philip, and show us with an emoji where you are. Philip?
I think you're muted.
Yeah, Philip is muted.
Oh, it should be better now. Okay.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
So thanks a lot for a very interesting talk. We've been talking a lot about privacy here, so I want to know if you could point out some pitfalls, some failures or some errors a user could make, because ColdCard is known to be a quite complicated wallet, and I think that's unjustified somehow. I think there are no really deadly pitfalls for a user that he can lose coins, or are there any? Where do they have to be especially careful?
I guess, I mean, like in the early days when we first launched the product, there were, say, last heuristics and checks on PSPTs, but we have taken all those in and sort of, we have improved the product now. It's like third generation to sort of help mitigate user mistake. And I guess like there is no perfect solution really, right? Our philosophy is to empower the user to sort of be smart, right? So we add all the advanced features. We try to help the noobs as much as we can. But at the end of the day, there is no substitute for a user to verify his own transaction before he signs it, right? Because the software can be owned in all the stack, right? It could be us, it could be Cable, it could be the software wallet on the computer. So really, the best thing and the only thing that can be done at the end of the day so people don't screw themselves either by mistake or by attackers is to review their transactions. And we put a lot of effort into making that as sort of like as simple and as straightforward as possible with the most amount of detail. So I guess that's sort of like the best answer I have for that. It's because the attacks are always changing, the Bitcoin is continually evolving. The only real mitigation is to enable the user to verify his own transactions.
Okay, good. Thanks.
Rodolfo, I'm gonna keep throwing questions at you until you pass out.
Sure.
Basically, that's the plan. Cool.
Yeah, let's do it.
So next up is Hero. Go ahead.
Hey guys, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, I'm the orange droid here.
Yeah.
Question about the supply chain and the shipping due to the strange, times that we are in. How is can you still supply parts? Can you still fulfill the shipments? How is the Concon doing that?
So our factory is considered an essential service by our province in Canada. So we make everything in Canada. Of course, chips and some parts are made in different countries. That's just how it is. But the majority of the device is made here and is all assembled here too. So we also secured a ton of extra inventory of parts here in Canada, and we have good relationships with like major vendors of parts. So it's fine. We're shipping. We have it in stock, and it's going to keep on going. The folks at the factory, what we did is we reduced the staff to a much smaller staff, and sort of like people are sort of separated as much as possible in there, properly masked, and all that good stuff. And we're functioning that way. We don't know what the future is going to be, but it seems like it's going fine for now. I guess, and then in terms of like supply chain security, we still have our standard setup, right, where the devices are built, programmed, and then securely bagged, all here in Canada too, and then they go to you that way.
Great, thank you. And how about shipping? Shipping the last mile to get it to the actually people who order it. Do you see any delays since everyone waits like a month for their, Amazon orders?
Yeah, so it seems intermittent and it's very dependent on your locale, right? So DHL and UPS, DHL, UPS, Canada Post seem to be fully functional. with intermittent delays, right? So it could be like some weeks we manage to get stuff to people overnight. Some weeks it can take a few extra days. And then people who are in cities who have logistical issues, then it's really completely out of our control, right? It could be that the device left us and it's sitting on your local delivery facility near your house, but for some reason your city is not doing deliveries. So I would check with your local DHL or local post office to know what the situation is.
Thank you very much, guys.
Next up, we have Sam. Sam, go ahead.
Okay, great. Thanks for the presentation. That was great. So when I think of SneakerNet, I think of air gapping, but I think of people also physically moving data around, right? That gets its name. And so when I think of examples of that, basically everything I can think of is people probably interfacing that data using USB, with hard drives, even things like OpenDime, which are great, are USB reliant. So is there recognition among people that there's some real vulnerabilities here and we need to move away from that? Or is the standard so set and adopted that we're never going to get away from this and we just need to mitigate it as best we can?
I gotta say I'm not optimistic about computer desktop standards. I don't think it's gonna change at all. So I think we're just gonna have to go around that.
Is there anything other than micro SD that is good for that?
The issue too is economies of scale, right? We have access to I hate that, but like military grade, for whatever that's worth, very extreme hardware protocols for transferring data that are sort of like there's all this very esoteric devices that you can use to transfer data physically between two devices. They have like in hardware proper encryption and proper DPA, so power differential analysis, protections, and all kinds of good stuff. But they make products completely economically inviable, right? So if I could make for you a $10,000 ColdCard, I can make some very cool stuff. But most people won't pay $10,000 for a device. So we have to work with economies of scale, and it's actually kind of a fun challenge to try to figure out how to do that in a much more secure way. I think microSDs have a lot going for them, just because they came in much later from a lot of the other sort of physical media that's commonly available, so they have a lot of better specs. They're not designed for security, but the way we use them can be sort of done very securely.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Great, thanks. Next up is Alex. Alex, go ahead. Go ahead.
Hey, hello. Thanks for the presentation over here. I like the ColdCard, and I have this setup where I use it with two electrons on two different computers, and I don't want to go into reasons, but I really need to use it like that. And the biggest issue I would want to have some synchronization between the labels I have on a one electron with the other. Do you have any solutions for that?
Yeah, that's
a workaround at least.
Problem. I actually do very similar to you. I have different computers that I use hardware wallets with. Sometimes the same wallet with different computers. There is Electrum does export labels. I believe there was a API way back then for synchronizing labels, but then you're doxing all your stuff. I think the best way for you to do it is maybe have a microSD card or a USB stick where you save those labels. So create a secure drive on a microSD or a USB stick, right? So like a secure image there. And then you mount that on the computer that you use, and that's where you save your wallet and your labels and all the Electrum data. I actually don't recommend people saving the Electrum data in its default local folder. It's much better to to have Electrum operate from a secure volume, and then you can actually transport the secure volume between machines as you need.
Yeah, well, thank you. It's easier to just synchronize them once a week, actually, manually, rather than doing that because it's so many steps. But thanks for the answer and thanks for the presentation.
Yeah, thank you.
Rodolfo, are you good with 2 more questions?
Yeah, sure.
Cool. So let's do
I'm having a drink here
Toshi.
now through my glass.
What's that?
I'm having a drink through my glass.
Oh, that's good. That's good. So Dodge Toshi, I think that's Steven. Hey, Steven, go ahead.
Hey, thanks for the over here. Over here.
Yeah, I see you.
Yep.
Yeah. Thanks for the talk. Just a general question. Has CoinKite ever made plans to develop something like a Bitcoin phone node? And if not, why?
So we actually have up 3 products on the bench now. I've been wanting to make a full node for about 8 years now, like a product full node, but it's not going to happen because I despise Raspberry Pis, and I cannot economically make a full node that would satisfy like the way I want a full node to be. So I don't have the economies of scale yet to make that reasonably. So I'll leave that for now, but we do have a few other devices that we are working on. They're not ready to ship per se, just because we're still trying to figure out like the economics of them. But they would be devices that would have some connection to either an SPV network or or RPC through, say over Tor to your own node or something like that. So the device itself wouldn't have a full node, but you would have access to a full node via some connection. So that's sort of where we are at with those state chain aware devices.
Great, thank you.
Cool. I'll take one last question from De-Evolution. Go ahead. De-Evolution?
I see him, but I don't see the.
We can't hear you. Are you maybe muted? Okay, sorry, we can't hear you. I'm going to move ahead. So, Fred.
Okay, cool. One question I have is regarding Bluetooth. So we've talked about USB. What do you think about Bluetooth in terms of security?
No. No radios on hardware wallets are ever made, period. It's just no. It's... if I'm making a device that's state aware, right? So chain aware, it has access to a node, then I'd maybe put something like that. But then I wouldn't want to use that device as a cold storage for coins.
So what about, for example,
there is
LED?
Yeah.
The Legend
I'm sure
X or Cool Wallet S, like those devices that connect, for example, with either your phone or your laptop, that wouldn't be something that you'd recommend.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't. Like there is Bluetooth is it's another clusterfuck like USB is. It was not designed to be secure. There is issues with privacy on that too, because once you turn the radio on, you can remotely identify the device. So say you're going to an airport, somebody could find out your ID and use that to track you. And that's the attacks we know, right? I mean, I'm not a Bluetooth expert, but I'm sure there's a lot of other attacks that are either not very public or just not public at all. So it's not. I don't think a radio is a good idea. And then I guess Wi-Fi is another bag of hurt. So all of those are just simply they were never designed for this kind of security. So I would not recommend. I don't think Cool Wallet is a secure device anyway, so I wouldn't even go there. The guys from Ledger are pros. I'm sure they put in a lot of effort into making that secure, but it's just not a kind of risk for either privacy or security risk I'm willing to take.
Thanks.
Cool. Okay, so that's it basically. So Rodolfo, thank you for giving us this awesome presentation, and thank you for the added paranoia in those difficult times. We appreciate it.
Thank you. It's
awesome.
I think it's thank you. Oh, look at that. Lots of hands clapping.
Yeah.
This was an interesting experience. Presenting, sitting on my desk, but kind of not. It's a very weird, kind of cool thing.
Yeah. And you can't use the phone while you're presenting, which is weird for you, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I could be texting while I am presenting.
Yeah. Well, so thank you for doing that. That was fun. And thank for everyone for coming. I also want to thank Ben, the Carmen, and Bar, who helped us with moderating this one. And we're going to have another meetup next week at the same time. So if you like that and you didn't join the Telegram group yet, you should. It's VR Bitcoin on Telegram. That's t.me/VR Bitcoin. And well, as usual, we're gonna do a VR chat thing if you want to join. In like
I'll go there for a little bit.
Yeah, so we'll start in like 15 minutes. So for now, I'm gonna unmute everyone here, and you can just have fun. And in about 15 minutes, I'll send the details about the VR chat thing on Telegram.
Well,
but yeah,
thanks for having me. It was a pleasure. Thanks everyone for watching it.
Your voice, everyone. Use it responsibly.
That was awesome.
Alex?
Yeah, hey, how's it going,
Basically,
dude?
Johnny just ran into the middle.
Hello,
of
how are
the
you?
See that?
Oh wow, that means I have Corona now.
There is an option.
Hey, Johnny 1000. Hey, dude. Sorry?
How you doing?
How are you, dude, man? Good.
To sync.
Oh, thanks for coming.
Can you go
Hey,
a bit
I
here?
find
Yeah,
You
you
good?
good?
So I can hear you.
Toronto.
Oh,
Yeah, you were saying?
is it all going okay there?
There is an
Yeah, we're fine. It's not bad.
I'm in London.
I can't.
I know you're
But
fine.
I can't hear you.
Yeah, you guys are having it rough there, eh? With your government is very into the whole civil liberties bullshit there.
And the server don't know.
Yeah, I guess they're going herding me